students will be considered and assessed before we make any offers for the school. So each student has a chance for an assessment at Harrow.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. All the students that apply will be assessed or will have the chance to be assessed?
They will be assessed.
They will be assessed. And I believe that's the same for foundation year.
Yes, for all grades.
Okay.
Every child who submits an application has an assessment. For the lower grades, obviously, it's a group interview, like a circle time kind of way. For the upper grades, it would be written papers.
Okay, so that's good to know. And I know also for GSIS and ESF, that's not the case. So perhaps could you explain why or how you do not assess all students?
So at ESF, we take applications on a waiting list, and our schools will only invite for assessment if there's a place available. And so otherwise, you are on an auto waiting list until that time.
In terms of GSIS, you only apply once to GSIS. So the biggest bottleneck, you're right, is kindergarten 1, when sometimes we are not able to offer everybody an assessment for that year group. But what we do in this case is we take your application forward to kindergarten 2, and then at that time hope that we have a chance to assess your child. And the chances for kindergarten 2 are better. There are more schools out there. The interviews we conduct are about the same than kindergarten 1. But yes, we cannot guarantee an assessment for a specific year group, but if that is not the case, we will defer your application as long as we have to until you get the chance to be assessed.
So how do you select which children to invite for assessment and which ones you don't invite?
Yes. We have a priority system in place, so that gives first priority to nationality, meaning German, Swiss, or Austrian passport holders. We have a German stream also, as you may know, and most of the German, Swiss, and Austrian children attend the German stream, but however there are a few who also try for the English stream. Then we give priority to siblings who are already at the school, to children of staff, to alums, that refers to the parents or to the child itself. Sometimes we have returning students, to debenture holders, and then the last category is the date of application. So when it comes to selection for an interview, I apply this priority system, and then of course also for those who have passed the assessment, we will also offer places accordingly. What is a big equalizer in this priority system is that every child needs to pass the entrance assessment, and then we consider them for a place offered. So no matter if you have a German passport or if you have a brother or sister in the school, they do need to pass the assessment first.
Right, thank you. I'm going to come to that. Are you getting a sense that it's quite complicated and it's different for every school out there? So let's come to the idea of an assessment. What happens during an assessment, and why does a child pass or why does a child not pass your assessment? Who would like to tackle that?
Well, our assessment days, we like to give children a taster day at the school as well, because when children come in often, they haven't had a chance to visit the school with their families. So we will have the assessment, we will have the children visit houses if they're older children. Usually from year 6 and above, we'll have a full day taster. They'll have the assessment, they'll have lunch, they'll go visit a house because we have a broad house system in the school, and then they'll finish their assessments or interviews, and then we give them an activity at the end of the day. So they know what it's like as a regular student to have lunch at school, do an extracurricular activity, and see what it's like to leave at the end of the day. For younger students, as most of us would do, is group assessments for K1 and K2. And then we also do kind of a group assessment and a CAT test assessment for the younger years 3, 4, and 5.
For the parents, what is a CAT test?
Well, from years 4 and above, we do a cognitive ability test, which is a computerized test, and a written English and a maths paper. For the younger children, K1 and K2, we'll do an assessment based on play-based models, just how they sit in groups, are they able to pay attention in class, can they separate from mom and dad, just to see that they're ready and they're prepared to start school. Years 1 and 2, we'll do group-based assessments to see in different little small projects how well that they class, it will be similar to our age class. So if we have a K2 moving up, we would like to base it on what our K2s are doing and how these children would fit into a class with them.
What does an assessment look like at ISF?
Okay, so I think our assessment, the whole idea is not very different from Harrow and probably not very different from all the other schools. I.e., we have for the younger kids very much play-based, circle time group activities. So our foundation year, our grade 1, which in local schooling terms would be considered K3 year and primary 1 year, they do circle time activities. They have groups of 8 or 12, depending on the grade. And they do, like again, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, ability to sit down, listen to what the teacher's saying, participate, social interaction with the teacher as well as the other kids. And that would be what we call stage 1, and then stage 2 would be the parent-child interview where we invite the parents to come in, and that's a selection process based on the performance of the child in stage 1. This is for the lower grades, and then for the upper grades, then again it's similar to other schools where you have written papers. And we do written papers in English, Chinese, and in primary we do Chinese math as well as English math. In secondary it's only English math. And then we have oral interviews as well.
So very straightforward.
Yeah, very straightforward. It's very straightforward.
Anything to add that's different from this, or is it pretty much the same?
It's pretty much the same, but we would like to get away. Like to get away from the word interview because that's a scary word for our little ones. So we focus on what we call play-based or play visits when our kindergarten K1s come in. So they come in the kindergarten setting, a relaxed setting with their parents. Our teachers then observe and to see if they're ready for school, which is what we've been all mentioning about. And for primary, for year 1, it's very much similar to that as well. We set up our interviews or our process of seeing the kids in a kindergarten setting, so they can go to the different play centers and play and interact with other children from their kindergartens. When we do set up groups for seeing our children, we like to group them from similar kindergartens so that the children are then comfortable when they come into the primary school, that they see familiar faces from their own kindergarten.
Yeah, I think we are the same in terms of having different approaches to different year groups in terms of assessments. Maybe for kindergarten it's a little different because they are so small. They are like sometimes 2 years old, and separation anxiety is a big issue. So that's why before at GSIS you book an assessment, or before you come for an assessment, we offer the service to parents and children of a so-called classroom visit, which means we invite parents over to come to our school about a week before the assessment, and then they can come into the classroom. We try to set it up as authentically as possible to the actual assessment. We even try to lay out the same toys. And the children just play there for a few minutes, 10 minutes or so. And then when you come back for the actual assessment, you can tell your child, oh, let's go to the place where you played with the toys, with the dollhouse or with the trains. And the feedback from parents tells us that this is a really good way to get them familiarized with the environment, the little ones, and when they come the second time, it's a little bit easier for them. But also for the parents, I try to explain the whole process to them, that they know that they manage the expectations. And I think parents also have not separation anxieties, but anxieties when they come to those assessments, and that helps them as well.
May help to some extent. We did a little bit of a poll on Facebook, and we solicited some questions for today's panel, and the word that kept coming through again was traumatic. Most traumatic experience ever. Now you've set up your assessment procedures in such a way that that's not your intent, But why are parents traumatized by this process? Have you any examples to share?
Well, what we do is we actually allow the parents to come in for the first 10 or 15 minutes. Some children aren't used to being separated from their auntie or from their parents, and you have to create a really calm environment for that child. There's several children in the classroom. Some children will scream more than others, some people will be happy, some children run into the room without mommy and daddy. So we try to ease the children into it, and it's worked out really well for us, and then the children have come out. So I haven't personally found it for a lot of parents traumatic. I think it's nerve-wracking because it's the first time they'll ever have to do something to try to get into a school or try to get something that may not be guaranteed for them. And that, I think, is more traumatic for the parents than actually for the children.
Well, at GSIS, we don't separate the parents from the children. They are in the same, like they are next to each other.
But I've heard that that's actually, in a sense, perhaps causes more anxiety than if they were separated.
Well, yeah, okay, possibly. But I think it's good that we have made the experience that in K1, the door between the two rooms is open, so the child can always have eye contact with the child, and they can come over and see, oh, is mommy, daddy still there? I want a hug, and then go back into the room. K2, we close the door because they are a little bit older, but they still know that my father or my mother is next door.
So maybe the traumatization comes when the result comes, and your child is not accepted, your child did not pass the assessment. What are the most common reasons that children don't make it through the assessment?
For ESF, we look, the basic thing that we look at is the level of English. So if they don't meet our English entry requirements to gain, they will not be taken in. So we're not selective. It's based on the English level. We have classes of 30, and so we will expect that the children have a certain level so that they can access the curriculum.
Is that similar, reaching, and perhaps Chinese level in the case of ISF?
It depends on the grade level. But before I go there, can I just go back to the traumatizing-ness of this whole process? I think, I mean, I'm a parent myself. I have 3 kids. And I was very much in the shoes of the audience where I had to look for a school for my kids as well. And I think the traumatic part is not knowing, the uncertainty, because all along you kind of know what you are doing in life, and now you are asking your child to do something. And you have not much of a control over what your child is going to do and what your child says. And you can only prepare your child so much because kids always say the darndest things, as you probably have heard that phrase. So for us, what we try to do is we also look at the school reports that the child and you, the parent, give as well. So how the kid does in the kindergarten, how they do in the primary school if you're applying for a higher grade, so that it's not just that one time, but we also look back to see what your child has been doing in kindergarten. But it will be nerve-wracking in the sense that you don't know the answer. And I'm not sure whether it is traumatic when you get the answer. I think it's probably a sense of relief that you finally know. Maybe yes, maybe no. Better if it's yes. Not so good, obviously, if it's no. But at least that uncertainty element, just like the stock market, it's gone. You know for sure what's going to happen next. Okay. Now, going back to your question, all right? What makes us choose a child and not choose a child? For us, we don't really have the language requirement for foundation year, which is our entry grade. Our language requirement only kicks in for the second grades and above, i.e. grade 1, grade 2, etc., etc. The foundation year, we only look for kids who show that they are interested in learning a language. We also look for parents who show that they want to support their child's language learning in English as well as in Chinese. We have accepted kids in the past who don't really speak English or Mandarin, Chinese Mandarin very well, but say they are French, or they are Italian, or they're Korean, or Japanese, and those are their mother tongues. They do speak some English, maybe not a lot of Putonghua, but they're okay in the English. But it's clearly not their first language, and we do accept it because they show that they want to be here. They show to the teacher, I want to participate. I'm following you. I'm trying to figure out what you're doing, and I want to learn and be involved. To us, that's the most important thing.
But why do you not accept children?
Well, you then conversely have the kids who don't participate. So even though they might know the language, they have decided that, yeah, don't really want to be here. I'm just going to stand here and look at you. And we have kids who do that. They just don't want to be involved.
The other issue is sometimes we can't take students into certain year groups, but we will all give a chance for at least waiting lists when that possibility comes if a group of families leave suddenly. And there's always that chance that happens, and we have to give them that opportunity as well.
Okay, so let's address the elephant in the room. We're talking about children who have a diagnosis of ADD, ADHD, maybe they're on the spectrum, or dyslexic, what have you. How do you treat those applications? Do you treat them differently or not?
At ESF, we do have a special school, and then we do have learning support classes within our mainstream primary and secondary schools. And so if a child has certain needs, we oftentimes encourage parents to do dual applications. So you do a mainstream application and a SEN, a special needs application. They are two separate processes, and if your mainstream application is seen first and the school requires further information, they will call upon the learning needs section to look at their special needs application to see where that is at processing. We try to align that, especially for year one, the timelines that we see students, so that we are informed as to what level of need that child has. We do have different levels of support at ESF. We call them levels of support 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then 5, 6 is our special school. So 3 and 4 means they're the learning support class, special classes, which is a smaller class, about 7 kids in the mainstream setting. And then levels 1 and 2, which a lot of kids may be in with needing some support, but not to the extent that they need to come out of class.
Or GSIS?
Yeah, we are currently developing our policies on diversity and inclusion. And since we are a German Swiss international school, we are working closely with the German government on that. Inclusion is a way and not a status, so we are getting there. I, for example, was part of an inclusion group in our school and working towards this, and as a result of this group work, we employed a staff that is mainly looking into inclusion, and we are going this way. We started this path.
At ISF, we have in the past accept kids with special learning needs. Obviously, it will be very challenging because we are bilingual curriculum. We do want the kids to have very strong English and Chinese, but we have accepted them in the past. And the key always is that the parents are upfront and tell us about the child's learning needs. So in the application form, we actually have a section where we ask you, has your child ever seen a psychologist, educational psychologist, a counselor, or anything? And if that is the case, then you should put it in there, and we always take that into consideration. If that's not mentioned, then we wouldn't know, and then obviously we would treat the child a different way when it comes to the assessment. So always, I don't want to say that.
Disclosure is always better than discovery.
Thank you very much. much. Disclosure is always key. Yes.
We also would have on our application forms these types of things: housing your child with special needs, or educational needs, or senior educational psychologist. And again, we take it on an individual basis. There's a certain level that children have to access the curriculum, but it would be on a case-by-case basis for us.
And we do too, and we always encourage parents to be honest, but that's not always the reality. Do you therefore have some provision in the school whereby is there a quota system? Would you accept a certain number of children with some diagnosed need, or it's not that scientific?
We don't have, at ISF, we don't have a quota system. We have a learning support team, and they will work closely with the family. I mean, the family needs to sign up an agreement with the school that, I consent to my child being part of the learning support team and being monitored. We have done individualized education plans for the relevant children who do have these needs, but we don't have a quota.
Okay, and ESF, we do have a limited number of places, so I guess it's in a sense a quota, so a number of places that we offer to learning support class. And like I was saying, there are 7 in the school, so that's the number that, if we're looking at higher levels of support at level 3 and 4, but we don't necessarily have a cutoff for levels 1 and 2.
I mean, we find it's very difficult for children with an explicit diagnosis. So you would not accept children if they don't meet the required language requirements? English language, you talked about Julie. What else? What else are you looking for in terms of them to meet your requirements to be able to pass the assessment?
Well, I think the assessment itself would be what we would be looking at as a baseline for students. I think all schools would probably compare students to their current cohort of that age and year group, and that's also a good way to benchmark our students. And there's other things that we also consider, like, are they a strong sportsman? Are they really strong in the arts? Children have the academic ability to offer, but there's other areas they might be slightly stronger in, and we do have to take those into consideration as well as the assessment.
With German Swiss, it's the assessment, as you said, Suzanne. That of course varies from year group to year group. For the little ones, it's not an academic assessment. We look for native English speakers or the equivalent of native English speakers of the same age. But we also look at it, it's a group assessment as well as an individual assessment for kindergarten. So we look at how does the child act in a group with other children, social, emotionally, how's the compliance with the teacher and the English. Those are the main criteria. And going ahead, older, then we have a standardized assessment.
So focusing on the younger years for a moment, I mean, if the child's just having a bad day and doesn't like the look of the teacher, and that's it, game over?
Well, if the child is a sibling or is a nominee of a capital note, that means they have a dementia, we give the child a second chance. But the child, when they come back the second time, they do have to show that was a bad day and today is a good day. And I'm good and I can do everything today. Generally I can do everything. Unfortunately, we can't do reassessment opportunities for everyone, because essentially that might mean that my job is never done and I will be doing lots and lots of reassessment. So
your job is never done.
Yes.
Yeah, for German Swiss, the assessment teams consist of teachers who teach this year group children. So they are there for a long time in German Swiss. So they know what to expect, but they also know if a child has a bad day. So having a bad day doesn't necessarily mean that is it. If a child is crying or so, they go outside, the parent calms the child down, they come back in, and they try several times. And I think it's that experience of the teachers that really is important to get to the ground and to look beyond what you see in the crying child. If that makes sense.
think I would agree as well, because when you see a child who's upset, they do also see that they haven't been seriously. They may be crying, but they're still picking up the pencils and the pens. They're still playing or doing something. And I think as professionals, the early years teachers can see that, and we have looked past that. If they're extremely upset, we'll just take them out for a while, calm them down, bring them back in, and normally they're able to kind of continue on once they see the other children as well.
Yeah, I mean, we do the same things too. If the child, I think ESF is the same. The child's crying, but he's still coloring away. Yes, we understand that it can be quite separation anxiety, etc. for the child. And normally after a while, 10 minutes or so, the child has calmed down and is able to perform all the other tasks.
I think often as parents we get so anxious and project that onto the children. I want to then look at older children when they're sitting for basically academic tests. How do you then select? If the children that you've invited for the test all do meet the requirements, do you have a pass rate? Are you taking from the top? Or how do you then select those children?
Well, also for us it would be, are they debenture holders? Are they siblings? Are they coming from a sister school? We have schools in different countries. Those would be the levels that we would consider first as well. And then we would look for how many spaces do we have and how well are the students in the cohort done. And then additional things. Do they have something else to offer that if I put two children together and I see one has something extraordinary to offer, whether it's an artistic ability or they've done something in the community, that's something that we would also look at as well. So it's never black and white.
There's no science to it. Do they all sit for an academic test at year 3, 4 upwards?
2.
2. What does a year 2 academic test look like?
Age appropriate, but we do have a reading comprehension, a story writing, math, like age appropriate math, and an interview with one of the assessment team members.
Child.
The child, yes. We only assess children, we don't assess parents.
Coming to that. So that's a one-to-one interview.
Yes.
For the child.
Yes,
For a
and
6-year-old.
there are written components, the math and the story writing, and then the reading is oral and the interview, obviously.
So I know that assessment procedures do differ a little bit. I do believe that you do not have a parent interview at
No, we don't.
GSIS. Why do you not have a parent interview?
Because we think every child should come into GSIS on its own merits.
Okay. Why do you have a parent interview?
So at ESF, we do have that component of a parent interview. It's not for the purpose of for parents failing or passing. It's for the purpose of getting to know your child more, so that's an opportunity for you as the family to share more about your child, any information about things that the school should be aware of. You can share. Also an opportunity for you to ask questions of us about the school and what you are hoping for your child. So I guess the term interview is not correct or appropriate. It's more an opportunity for you to share about your child.
Okay, so you know that we do a parent-child interview in the lower years and just a parent interview in the upper years. Why do we have one? Because at ISF we want it to be a home-school partnership. We want to work together with the parents to help your child learn what we want your child to learn. Hence, we want to better understand your own mission, your own vision, your own goal with regards to your child's education. You, on your part, can read our prospectus that states our mission, our vision, our goals, and how we intend to go about getting there, but we don't have one of you unless we actually take the time and talk to you to better understand what you're looking for. And that's why we have the parent interview.
Thank you.
We don't have parent interviews, but once the children are in school, we have a lot of one-to-one activity with the parents, especially with the older children because of the house system. they'll become a member of the house. They'll meet their housemaster or housemistress. If they're a boarder, every week they'll probably meet the parents when they drop them off. And it's a very one-to-one contact. So we always seem to have a lot more, and I'm a parent as well at the school, I have a lot of one-to-one contact with the teachers, and we also put on year events for each year group. The second school starts, we start doing the year 7, the year 8, the year 9. Parents come in, meet the teachers, talk about the curriculum. So we have a lot of engagement with our parents and with our parent organisation as well.
But this is not part of the assessment criteria.
As part of the assessment, we focus on the child as an individual. And when we do the interview process, a lot of times children talk about themselves and their families and what they like. And we do get an idea of their background. But we do focus more on the child, and is the child going to benefit from a Harrow education? And is this a good fit for that child as well?
But the parents are part of the process, so whether you do or you do not have a formal parent interview, you are evaluating the family, you're evaluating the parents to some extent. Is that true to say?
I don't think
No.
so.
Okay. Then, so it's never, okay, for those of you that have a formal parent interview, has it ever been the case where the child sails through and the parents don't?
Well, okay, I'll just take that question, all right? Because yes, we do have a formal parent interview, and it's quite funny when we interview parents. Sometimes the parents will say, "My child told me to do well today because if she doesn't get in, she said it's my fault." And so I think back to the question as to whether sometimes the child does really well and the parent does not, and that's a reason for rejecting or not accepting the child. I think as part of the interview process, it's actually a discovery, as you yourself said. It's a discovery, and sometimes during the conversation with the parents, they realize that this is actually not the school that they're looking for, because when we talk to them, we say, you know, this is homework that you'll have, and they might go, "Oh, really? You have homework?" You know, that kind of thing. And we do, and we always explain to them, this is what we are looking, this is who we are. And along the way, you realize that there was actually a cross communication between their expectations of what ISF was and what we really are.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it there. But yeah, I think more and more schools are introducing a parent meeting if they did not have one previously, and yeah, we hear lots of stories. What are some of the tips that you could offer to parents? And maybe what are some of the mistakes that they sometimes make, and that you would advise the parents here present to not make those same mistakes?
Well, I would say have a flexible approach on what you think is the right school for your child. I understand I'm a mother too, we all want the best education for our children, and maybe we have this particular school in mind and this and no other school, maybe because other friends tell us about it, or that was the school we went to. But I think you should also look at your child. How is your child? Is it a good fit, not only academically, but socially, emotionally? Is that the right school for my child? And children change, and I think they develop, and maybe they are not the same with 3 than they are with 4 or 5, and then just have a flexible approach to it, and allow yourself to change your mind.
I totally agree with exactly what you said, because some parents come across that only have a certain school they want, and put all your basket or your eggs in one basket. And so the idea is to have the flexibility, and then to know your child, to find, like I said, the best fit, because every child is unique, and they have an individual how they learn best. And so finding that fit for your child, also with applying early is not a good idea, because you don't know your child yet, and yet to develop, to see how his or her character is. So taking that time to do your research, and then finding what what it is best for your child.
What are some of the real mistakes that parents made?
I think I agree with what you said, but maybe something that parents might feel more practical would be, let's go take step by step and even talk about the clothes that the kids are wearing. Have the kids, when they come for the assessments, especially when they're young, wear something comfortable. Yes, precisely, Susan. I've seen kids, and they wear really beautiful, almost ball gown dresses. And I just look at, and sometimes you make the kids crawl. And you just look and you're wondering, should I be doing this? So make it practical, make it comfortable, where your kid's not itching at the collar. It's okay, we don't need the kid to wear beautiful clothes, but more comfortable clothes, because at the end of the day, it's the kid that's coming to the school. But I think another thing that I always say is what Ruth mentioned earlier, the disclosure. Tell us exactly what's happening at home, tell us who your child is. In my application form at ISF, we have something called what's your child's native language? Or language ability in English or Putonghua or Cantonese. And sometimes we have parents saying, oh, my child is native in English, believing that, oh, this is going to help my child get into your school because you want the kids to be English and Putonghua speakers. But actually, a child is not an English speaker. And when the teacher, recognizing or believing that the child is an English speaker, calls the child's name and says, Joanne, come here. Of course, Joanne doesn't speak English, doesn't understand, can't really hear her name in English, it's not listening. And the teacher assumes, that the child is inattentive and does not want to participate. So, these are just very basic stuff, but I think it would be very useful for parents to just think about that.
Common sense?
I think so too, and definitely clothes. Children should be natural and relaxed, and I've seen beautifully dressed children, and they're so adorable, but we want them to feel comfortable. They're going to be sitting for a certain amount of time. And another thing is, it's not really necessary to over-tutor a child for an assessment test. And that's kind of the elephant in the room, I think, for all of us. You're not doing them a service by doing that, because it stresses them out, I personally feel. And it's just one assessment. It's a snapshot on the day to see where you are and to see where you fall with our other children. It's not a make or break deal. And I think that's something that a lot of parents do put a lot of pressure on their children with.
Agree. I think particularly for lower years, I think we're all in agreement. You do not need to take your kids to additional preparation classes. It's really not helping. Mistakes that parents make. Any other common sense tips or nuggets of advice to offer? You've been doing this a long time. You've seen some things.
I guess another one would be arrive early for the interview.
Don't be late.
Eat a nice breakfast that's healthy, not too much sugar. I have seen a few sugary kids come in. Yes.
All seems pretty common sense to us, but I think at the end of the day, you want to see. Some of you have a very extensive application form, some not so much, but the child that's described on the application form, you want to see that child in real life when they show up for the interview, and if there are discrepancies, then there's cause for concern. Right, I think we've unpacked the interview assessment process. Should we call it something different? I don't think at this point. We have a lot of parents asking us questions about the age, the cut-off, and the different schools have different policies. So could you explain a little bit about your policy, and what's your attitude towards having a child maybe go up a year or even down a year if the parents request that?
Well, for us, we follow the British National Curriculum, and September 1st would be the cut-off date. And this can have issues from children coming from different schools as well. Unless a child was from day one in a different year group, we would normally try to put them in the appropriate age group. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal when children are younger, but as they get older, I've seen this over the years, occasionally if a child is in a wrong year group and they're much, much older or much younger, it can have an impact on that child as well as they're younger.
Yeah, I can't agree more. at German Swiss, especially for the younger ones, for kindergarten and primary, we strictly observe our cutoff dates. And we try to keep the age spread in the classes as narrow as possible, because it creates difficulties in academics, but more importantly in social and emotional development, especially when it comes to puberty or pre-puberty. It makes a big difference, 1 year of age, or even then if we would allow a larger spread, more than 1 year. And that's why we stick to our cutoff dates. We relax it a little bit in secondary school. So from secondary school on, we take also into consideration where does the kid come from, the child, and which year group did it attend, but not for primary and kindergarten for that purpose.
For ESF, we're very similar to German Swiss as well. We're very strict on the primary year groups at age, and then the more flexibility in the secondary, notably because of where they are academically and where they are coming from. So we don't accept early admissions ahead of their age, but we have our cutoff for each year group, and we look at the calendar year from January to December.
I think the same with ISF. At the start, we are very strict with our age groups because you don't want to have the dynamics will really change in the class if you have too wide an age range. But again, for the upper grades, because they come from different curriculum, they're coming from a different country, and their language abilities might be different. Yes, we do move them usually down if necessary.
Have you ever moved children up?
When they come across from a different school?
Yep.
Not in the 12 years that I've been at ISF.
Children up?
No, not likely.
No, so parents ask us a lot, so it's possible to go one down, but in my experience in Hong Kong, we haven't seen that, where parents want to accelerate that child. My child's gifted.
The thing we would also consider, especially for secondary, if they join according to their year group, however, when they do join and we find that they need more challenge or they're performing at a higher level, then we will look at that within the school to give them that challenge for learning.
Maybe you can stretch them in a year group as well, because again, you have the same issues as they're growing up. They could be the youngest in the class. Socially and emotionally may not be the right thing for the child long term, even if they are well ahead of other children. There's ways to stretch them academically in a year group.
I think at ISF, what we do is if they're very outstanding, we would still put them in their age group. But then we do have electives in our school in the secondary, starting actually from grade 5, where they can do research in microbiology lab, they can do classics, they can learn Latin, ancient Greek, etc. So these are the electives. So if they're very, very strong in one of the STEM things or the humanities side, they can pursue that instead as an add-on to their current curriculum.
Yeah. I mean, we are known for our academic excellency, so through our assessment, we also have very academically able children. But of course, we also have learning support that even enriches that if necessary.
So parents must apply on time during the application window to the school, depending on the admissions policy. Right? I have one final question that I've been asked to ask, and then we're going to open it to the floor for questions. Application fees. Discuss.
At ESF, our application fee is $2,000. We've just gained the approval to align our through train schools, so Discovery College and Renaissance College. They were 1,200, so they're in line with all of ESF. So the fee covers the whole processing. So we don't have a separate fee for the interview or assessment. So it's one-off fee.
2,000.
We charge $1,500. It's a one-off fee. Whether you are rolling over to the next year, we do not apply another fee. And again, this covers testing, administration, and it actually probably doesn't cover the cost of it, but it's a one-off. If you aren't successful in reapplying, then you will have to pay the fee again.
The ISF, the application fee is $1,000. Just like what's happening at Harrow, it does not cover the cost of the assessment. The amount of energy, effort, teacher time, assessment time that we put inside is a lot more than $1,000. Just reading the application and all the school reports alone will take a while for us to do. But we feel that there is a fee more to show sincerity, I guess, on the part of the parents.
2,350 for kindergarten applications, 3,700 for primary and secondary applications. But as I mentioned before, you only apply once to German Swiss. So you can apply for kindergarten, and if you are not getting in, or if you decide otherwise and then want to revisit German Swiss, you can do that. So it's from kindergarten to secondary school.
But it all adds up. You have an extra assessment fee.
We do.
So actually it's $8,000 to apply to GSIS.
Well, you pay for the application and then for the assessment, yes.
And otherwise, so I mean, there's a range of assessment fees, but parents could get into trouble quite quickly, right? By applying for, once they've done 2 or 3 or 4 schools, it becomes quite expensive. So be it. I am going to invite questions from the floor. Do you have questions of admissions for our panel members?
You just said that, 2 or 3 or 4 schools. Is that generally what you see people applying to when they're talking about international schools?
Well, you guys don't know, right? I mean, that would be the next stage of that. Which other schools are you applying to? That may come at some stage, but currently you don't ask for that. There's no. 3. We say 3.
You say
maximum.
3. Yeah, thank you.
Do you guys talk to each other at all?
Yesterday.
Well, okay. I know you have the dance meeting, but I mean, we have an applicant, Mrs. Wong, and their son has applied here. And you say, oh, he's also applied here. Do you have those kinds of discussions?
No. Thanks for disclosure.
Yeah,
Privacy
privacy
issues. It's not always appropriate. It's all like
Professional. Questions?
I think we talked about what not to do and how not to over-prepare our children, but are there any just tips then in terms of how we can prepare them, just generally, right around the home without doing too much and stressing them out? That'd be helpful, thank you.
Just talking to them, telling them what they're coming into. Maybe even, I think one of the most important things is come for a visit on the school, an open morning or a tour. I think children feel, as we said before, a lot more comfortable if they've been to a place before, and then they come in for the assessment. They say, oh yeah, I've been here before, it's okay. It's not this scary monster in their head that they haven't been to before. And I think just a good breakfast, relaxed, comfortable, and not stressed parents would be very helpful for most children.
How old is your child?
Oh, I'm pregnant, so.
Oh,
I just want some general people.
I think there's a big difference between local schools and the schools we have represented today, which we can generalize as saying that international schools. When we said earlier, right, no specific preparation needed for the younger years, just let them be kids. Other questions? We have a few minutes.
Let's say I apply to your school and you invite my son for an interview. And on the day that you've given us for the interview, my son really can't make it. And I reply to you and say, I'm really sorry my son can't make it. I mean, what's your reaction to that? Do you think that's not sincerity, or would you react negatively to that?
No. I believe and I trust you when you say, I mean, in my case or for GSIS, it's mainly that the child is sick, right, and can't attend an assessment. And then, of course, we would try our utmost to reschedule.
That would be the same here. So if you're calling to say there must be a reason, and so most of the time it's sick child, and so if you have a sick child, you have a doctor's note, we can reschedule it.
It's the same for ISF. If the morning your child is ill, then please call us. You don't need to bring your ill child to the school. It's probably not a very good idea anyway. sometimes we do have parents bringing their kids, and then after that they say that their child was ill. That doesn't work because, then they say, well, my child was ill, so my child needs another chance, but that doesn't work. So if your child's ill, don't bring your child to the school. We always reschedule, at least once. We will do that.
We would normally, for most year groups, not all, but have 2 or 3 assessments, and we would prefer you didn't bring your child if they're ill to see you, because then other people will get ill as well. And we understand that, and again, we have to trust you. Most of us are parents as well.
Thanks.
May I know how would you help to a child to transit from like a local school? So if a child is from a local school and then successfully applied and join the school, so is there any like support that you would be able to provide?
I always call GSIS boutique style school because we are really small. We only have in primary 2 classes of 26 students each. So it's all very small and it doesn't even depend on which class you are. We do accept students throughout the school year, and everybody is very aware of new students coming in. Usually the teacher knows and pays special attention, and then we have a buddy system very often that one child or one classmate will be responsible for your child to help them smooth in and show them around and introduce them to their friends. So yeah, that.
Maybe just a follow-up question. When you receive the application form and you're looking at the child's existing school, does that have any bearing on your assessment or selection process?
No, because we take children, I think all of us take children from all different schools and backgrounds, different countries, which is why we're international schools. And again, these days most families come from very different diverse backgrounds, have lived in different countries. So again, recently I had a child from a very local school with a diverse background and just slotted into school. It was really great. But we do provide buddies for older children, younger children. When someone new comes in, is sat next to someone who might be a nice partner for them, or can feel special taking them around for the day, show a little bit of leadership quality there. And these are all things we try to do for all the children, whether they're new in September or they come in mid-year as well.
So I'm feeling a bit left out here because technically ISF, not even technically ISF, is not an international school. We're in a private independent school. Having said that, we do have a lot of facets in the school which are quite similar to the international schools. So if your child's coming in for a local school or a school overseas, yes, we have the buddy system. We tell teachers, you have a new kid and these are some things you might like to know about the child, namely the academics, because you're talking about coming in at grade 4, grade 5. We would give the teacher some kind of idea as to what the child's academic abilities are. The buddy also be someone who the teacher feels will be able to fit fairly well and be a good person to guide and orientate the new student around.
So that'll be similar at ESF as well. Oftentimes, what I see is a lot of, say, local families, when they want to lose your child from a local system, would be the secondary. When they finish the primary, going into secondary. So it is a good point to move the child because all the students coming into year 7 are new. And so they already will be going through orientation with a new group of students coming from all different schools, even our own ESF schools. Our primary is not necessarily one primary transfers into one specific secondary school. They're mixed up according to their residential zone. So that's a good opportunity for all kids in general to adjust.
So parents often get very anxious that the name of the school that they are declaring, and sometimes they have a choice, they could declare one of 2 schools, it really doesn't matter at all.
Sorry, just a very quick question. Do you test kids' Chinese reading in assessment? Is it simplified Chinese or traditional Chinese?
I presume that's for ISF. Yeah, you can elect for the Chinese reading to be either simplified or traditional. At the point of admissions assessment, we are indifferent. as to whether it's 10 heater or 5 heater. It doesn't matter to us. But the teachers will teach in traditional characters in the school, but the kids in secondary actually start to do research work using simplified as well as traditional character, the books that they read. So just to repeat, it doesn't make a difference. You tell us actually on the application form whether you want it to be traditional or you want it to be simplified. And there is no priority given to either one.
Do we have time for one more question? If not, then that leaves me. Thank you so much. Thank you to Susan Phillips, to Joanne Sue, Julie Wong, Merve, Zefer. Thank you. Please give our